everyone. Good to be with you all. Just provide a bit of an update. Last weekend, when CUPE walked away from the bargaining table, I told my negotiating team through the mediator to be available to meet at any time to get a deal. And that offer still stands today. We were close, and I believe we can get this deal done soon for the best outcome for our students. I call on CUPE today to accept the dates, to lock it in, and let's move forward and get back to the table this week to resolve this regrettable situation and unnecessary disruption for our students. The deadline bargaining is part of the process. This is not unique. Creating a pressurized environment is not unique. Now, notwithstanding, I remain determined to reach a deal. And I remain mission focused on keeping kids in the classroom of this province. I appreciate concerns. Parents are concerned with CUPE announcing a full-out strike action, only 48 hours after commencing the partial withdrawal of service. And we know these types of actions ultimately only hurt our kids. Now, I can't speak to why they're ramping up only days in to this job action, but I do sincerely hope that CUPE agrees to meet with my team as soon as humanly possible, because we stand ready today to land a deal and to negotiate in the interests of our kids. I continue to stand with parents as we work to protect our students' futures, continue to invest in their potential, and keep them in the classroom of this province. Our students deserve no less. I'll take a few questions. Yeah.
When you look at the timing of this, they're the only group right now with the calendar that is able to be in a strike position. ETFO's not,
Right.
STF is not. There's a federal election on the 21st. How much of this do you think is political leverage?
You know, I'm not going to opine fundamentally on what is driving them. I mean, 48 hours, they initiated labor action. We're now at this stage. You know, they're taking action, a potential strike on the day of the first debate. I mean, I can't opine on what is their calculus. What I can tell them, fundamentally, what I could tell you, is that the focus, we're expending so much energies in the days leading up to Monday, we should really expend those energies at the table to get a deal. I mean, at the end of the day, for every party that is interested in our kids and keeping them in a safe learning environment, I think we should focus more on our children and less on the politics. I mean, just yesterday, the Prime Minister made comments on this issue. I think we need to depoliticize the process. I think less politicians in the process, less politics is really in the interest of our kids. I think we need people to put the interests of our children ahead of their own political self-interest, which is my message to the Prime Minister. It's my message to anyone who seems to want to inject and infuse a needless partisanship at a time when parents want it to be a focused, resolution-oriented table that gets deals that ultimately keeps their kids in class.
Would you consider back-to-work legislation and recalling the legislature if the schools are shut down, teachers don't cross the picket lines, and it's affecting students?
Yeah, I mean, look, my mission for the coming period, because as I noted in my remarks, this is not unique, Travis. I mean, to be quite frank, historically, a lot of these circumstances have played out to create that pressurized environment, and I understand that. Deadline bargaining, as I mentioned, is not a unique form of negotiating. I think the priority for me in the context of the toolbox is to really exhaust every single option available to get a deal through negotiated settlement. I mean, the best option I would submit for the Crown, for the government, for the union members themselves, for the trustees, is a voluntary negotiated settlement. Historically, that is the best way to get a deal. So, I don't really want to talk too much about those hypotheticals. I just don't think we collectively have done all of our due diligence to get a deal through that table.
To follow up,
Sure.
It's not off the table though completely.
What is on the table for me today is getting a deal.
What is your government doing to get a deal? What issues are you willing to move on?
Sure. Well, I mean, first off, on Sunday when CUPE announced, Chris, that they're going to be walking away, notwithstanding that we were quite close by the admission, I think, of most parties. I extended on my direction to our mediator, to the mediator rather, Mr. Kaplan. We offered additional dates for the government to meet. And those dates are before, I think, the other parties. As I understand, I've heard anecdotally that that QP said broadly that they would accept more dates to meet should there be a meaningful discussion. I hope they lock them in. I hope we officialize them and get them in place so that we can meet in the coming days. I mean, I stand ready to meet today. And I think the first step is to expend these energies at the table to get a deal. That is really the only solution-oriented forum where deals can be made. Historically, there is no alternative, at least when it comes to a voluntary agreement by all parties. I think when it comes to the details, I think we've noted broadly on job security, and on a few other issues, we've provided additional latitude to get there, which is why that issue isn't the fundamental sticking point here. We've, I think, demonstrated a reasonableness at the table, which was necessary because I was mission-oriented in getting a deal. What has been the sticking point, and as communicated by others as well, is the issue related to sick days, leave, extended leave. And as you know, I mean, this principally for me, the concern is creating a system where we have effectively a revolving door of staff and no permanency, no stability, no predictability for a child to have access to the same worker in the education sector in their classroom. And we think that ultimately undermines their learning. There's a fiscal consideration, although I would submit it's actually not the primary motive of my concern. I mean, when we're expending $35 million a day on sick leave, instead of reinvesting those dollars in our kids, in better textbooks, and improved technology in the classroom, etc., I think that raises concern. But it actually, to be honest with you, is not the principal issue. It is the fact that we have in this province a rather high level of sick days, on average more than 15 per year. And I think that's a concern for a lot of people in the system. The trustees have noted this, rather vigorously, their concerns on both sides, both fiscal and from the student's perspective. I'm really talking about the kids' perspective because I think having more permanency and finding a way to bring those numbers down is best. Now, I don't want to get, respectfully, I've I think expended, I've communicated rather liberally. I think I need to appreciate that at the end of the deal, I want a deal. At the end of the day, I want a deal, and the best practice is to allow that discretion at the table. But that is the issue that's in the public. That is the sort of the core issue, and I think for, as roughly 130 days of sick leave, about 120 of which are paid at 90%. 11 at 100%. I just think that there's a need to have a somber discussion at the table in confidence, away from the spotlight, allow for us to, in good faith, really talk about these things and find a way forward that is constructive, but ultimately allows their children to be in classrooms in Ontario.
One of the results. As far as full-day kindergarten, this strike goes ahead on Monday. Full-day kindergarten, what's going to happen with those students, because early childhood educators are a big part of that? And also, what about children with special needs, because support staff take care of, the special needs that those children have? Are those kids going to have to stay at home?
I've been very clear that my hope and my expectation is that we would never compromise the safety of kids. I think as a broader principle, one of the things I commented on some days ago was when QP provided that directive, that list of issues, a list of services that they will not be, or they're discouraging or directing their staff not to do. The sixth item on that list was the administration of medicine to a child who's ill. Now, I think, as I've said, and I do believe this, I know quite a few QP members, and I think in the heart of hearts they're going to do the right thing. I'm a bit troubled that was even on the list to begin with. But look, I think the system overall, the ecosystem around our kids, from administration to the student, to the boards of education, to the Ministry of Education, to the workers, the EAs, as well as, of course, the teachers, I think we're all going to have to put the kids first. And so
that those children, the full-day kindergarten and children with special needs, if this strike goes ahead on Monday, will have to stay home.
I think QP will have to answer the consequence of that decision. I think for me, my hope is that no child has service disruption, that they're in a safe environment, and they're able to go to school on Monday. That's the goal for this week, and that's the goal for the coming days. And I really hope, and I hope that my parents hear this, that we want to get a deal that keeps their kids in the classrooms of this province.
One of the results of the work to rule is the fact that some school doors are not being locked, their front doors are not being locked. parents in cottage country with the Trillium Lakelands District School Board received a letter which in part reads, one of the directives to QP staff is that they are not to operate school security door buzzer systems. It goes on to say that they do not have available administration staff to monitor those buzzer systems, so the doors will be left unlocked. If someone wants to walk into a school in our province and harm, injure, or even worse to students here in this province, who's at fault?
Well, my expectation is the safety of every child is not compromised. Full stop.
Safety is being compromised very clearly here. Front doors are not being locked.
I appreciate that. And my response to hearing that is that no child in the province should have their safety compromised. There should be protocols in place to ensure every single child is in a safe learning environment in the province of Ontario. And my mission, notwithstanding the decision by QP to today ramp this up after effectively 48 hours of partial withdrawal of service, is that we can remediate that problem by getting a deal before any child could be in a place where they're unsafe.
Is there any particular issue that the government is not willing to budge on?
You know, I think we've demonstrated a reasonable flexibility that I think is necessary, but I think that that spirit needs to be matched on all sides. I think, you know, we've been fairly clear that on you know, at the end of the day, we're prepared to be reasonable and flexible to get a deal. And I think that nimbleness is required by everyone. You know, I think we've also demonstrated on a variety of subject matter, including job security, that we've demonstrated a reasonableness where we've moved a bit on that. I think with respect to, you know, issues we're ill-prepared to move on, I think we've really, in word and deed, been fairly reasonable through this process, to be quite frank. But an issue we have cited, an issue that trustees and boards have cited, that I think requires discussion at the table, is focused on a leave where we have scenarios where education workers are literally a revolving door of staff coming through schools, no permanency, no predictability. That's a problem. You know, we talked about EAs, talked about kids. I mean, talk about kids with disability, particularly intellectual or developmental disability. Many of these parents, one of whom I spoke this morning, will tell you that having the same worker in place is critical to the success of their child. So we seek to ensure to mitigate a scenario where they're present. We try to create a situation or an environment where they are more present by fixing that issue. But I actually don't think on our end that the obstacle lies with us. I think we've demonstrated a reasonableness through this process.
Do you expect teachers and students to cross picket lines if they go up on Monday? And if they don't, what happens to them?
You know what? I expect education workers and teachers in the province of Ontario to be in class with their students, educating their kids.
How confident can you really be that you're going to be able to reach a negotiated settlement in just a few matter of days, especially when QP already seems determined to ramp it up even further?
Colin, I think for us, we just have to remind ourselves of what's transpired in the past versions of labor strife with parties, literally all three parties. I mean, these types of environments happen by design, pressurized environments. Deadline bargaining is not unique to the government and for the parties that drive that approach. So, but yet deals have been made. Overwhelmingly deals have been made, negotiated by the parties. So, I remain cautiously optimistic that if QP will accept those dates and lock them in officially, we'll get back to the table today, hopefully as soon as humanly possible, but we stand ready to do it literally today, and to get back to the table to get a deal. I think there is a prospect, actually. I mean, to be quite frank, we're talking about fundamentally most issues were resolved last Sunday. Overwhelmingly, we made progress. This is where I face a bit of frustration and a bit of, just not trying to understand why. Why have they made this decision today? And I can't answer that. I really don't. I cannot. Perhaps have a similar question mark. But what I can say is that from our perspective, I will remain absolutely determined, notwithstanding the noise, to get a deal. And I will do anything I can to keep the room focused on our kids and not on ourselves.
Further to Antonella's question,
sure.
Minister. So is it your expectation then that if we have a strike next week, every school in the province will remain open?
It is my expectation that kids will remain in class learning, but it is also my hope that we will not be in a situation that QP will come back to the table, lock in those dates so that we can land a deal to mitigate against any of those circumstances that you've enumerated.
Surrounding the issue of the sick days, what has been the
Sure.
response from QP, especially given the excess of $35 million per day on sick leaves, but also a disproportionate amount of these sick days are being taken on Fridays and Mondays, which is causing a burden on the province.
Yeah.
What's been the response from them?
You know, I mean, I will let QP speak for themselves. I mean, I at the table, we're trying to maintain a level of discretion. I've heard their comments publicly. I'll let them speak for themselves. I do think there's a serious concern about the effects it has on kids. The fact that we have situations where staff are literally coming and going, where you have some students who really need to have a presence of staff, particularly on the EA side for kids with autism or other intellectual or developmental disabilities. So I'll let them speak for why they seem so determined on that matter. I think for us, though, I'm just going to continue to signal to QP, signal to you and to the parents of this province that I stand ready today to get back to the table. I'll take one more question.
Speaking about EAs.
Yes.
And some of the situations that they deal with.
Yep.
I mean, oftentimes these are very difficult, very stressful situations
Yep.
that these folks are in day to day. The average EA makes $35,000 to $40,000. What do you say to those who think that you're pinching pennies with frontline staff and it's the wrong place to find pennies?
Yeah, you know, I think the undercurrent of your question is that many EAs work hard, and I know that they face challenges in the classroom. I know that they care about the kids. I've met many EAs. I can tell that they are driven for the right reasons why they've made this a vocation. So I share a concern about safety of EAs. I obviously want to make sure we're able to retain talented EAs. The retention of quality staff is important, and the ability to attract new talent, because we need more EAs in the province increasingly given the changing profile of students in the class. So, you know, my message is we've provided, I think, a very reasonable and fair offer on the table, where you're seeing net increases every single year in the basis of that contract. And I also think that, you know, the benefits and all the other sort of aspects that govern those deals, I think, provide incentive for people to stay in the system. You know, we've got, as you noted, over 120, 130 days of sick leave and other sort of benefits associated with that line of work within the public service. So we think that our approach is reasonable. It is very much student focused. It respects their craft and their work ethic, and it also ensures a reasonableness about the way forward, because, as you know, there are many people, and in the province of Ontario, we have at least as of 2018, we have the lowest rate of income growth in the nation. And I think that's a challenge for people at home who face difficulty. And the fact that we provided an annualized increase, no matter what, of 1% as the baseline. I mean, and to be fair, these things are before negotiating, so I can't really prejudice that. But that's the item that we've introduced, not passed at this point, I think is actually very fair. And as I say, we've been reasonable at the table. We've been open at the table to understanding any other way we can maybe, you know, find a solution. And I think that spirit needs to be now matched by all parties.
Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you so much.